You were the brilliant child, the one who could sense things others missed, the one who grasped concepts before explanations were finished, the one who read between lines not just in books but in people. And for a while, that brilliance felt like a gift. People noticed, teachers praised, adults said you were mature for your age. You learned fast, spoke well, impressed easily. But somewhere along the way, that gift started to feel like a burden. Today you feel empty, like something vital disappeared. Like your life is a role you're performing rather than a truth you're living. And you don't understand why, because on paper, you did everything right. Let's start with a hard truth. Your brilliance was never just about intelligence. It was about adaptation. You learned how to be smart because it was your way of staying safe. You read people because you had to. You understood the mood in the room because your nervous system was constantly scanning for signals: approval, disapproval, danger, silence. You weren't just gifted, you were surviving. And when a child survives by being sharp, by being useful, by being exceptional, they often miss out on something fundamental: being loved simply for existing, not for what they do, not for how they perform, but for who they are. So here's the paradox. You were praised for being ahead of your years, but you were never allowed to just be a child. You became the adult in the room too soon. You made yourself small so others could feel big. You made yourself helpful so others wouldn't leave. You made yourself perfect so no one would be disappointed. And now, as an adult, you don't know how to stop performing. You don't know how to just be. You've built a life of accomplishments, and yet you feel like a stranger inside it. You keep asking yourself, why doesn't anything feel real? Why doesn't anything feel enough? Let me offer you a radical idea. Maybe your emptiness isn't a failure, it's a signal, a philosophical invitation. In ancient terms, it's the void not as absence, but as a space for rebirth. The Greeks called it chaos, the fertile nothing that precedes creation. Buddhism speaks of emptiness not as a void to fear, but as a space to awaken. What if your emptiness isn't the end of something, but the beginning of truth? Because when you've spent your life being what others needed, emptiness is what you feel when you finally stop. When the masks fall, when the performance pauses, and what's underneath isn't a flaw. It's the part of you that was never allowed to fully form.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Have you ever asked yourself, if I wasn't trying to impress anyone, who would I be? That question terrifies the brilliant child. Because brilliance, when used as armor, becomes identity. You start to believe you are your productivity. You are your intellect. You are your potential. But brilliance without connection becomes isolation. And connection, the real kind, requires vulnerability. It requires showing up not as the polished version of yourself, but as the raw, uncertain, messy self. The self that doesn't always have the answer. The self that isn't always impressive. The self that simply is. And here's where things get even deeper. The brilliant child often carries an invisible wound. The belief that love is conditional. That your value must be proven. That rest equals laziness. That asking for help makes you weak. You internalize these beliefs not because they were true, but because no one taught you otherwise. You were too busy becoming what the world rewarded to ask what your soul actually needed. And now, the emptiness is your soul's way of speaking up. It's saying, I'm still here. You forgot me. You left me behind while chasing gold stars and perfect GPAs and high salaries and external applause. But I never left you. So what do? How do you recover the self that brilliance buried? First, you stop running from the emptiness. You listen to it. You sit with it. You ask it what it wants to show you. You begin to untangle your identity from your usefulness. You begin to create not for applause, but for truth. You begin to speak not to impress, but to connect. And slowly, painfully, beautifully, you begin to become real. Like the velveteen rabbit in the children's story, you become real not when you're perfect, but when you've been loved into wholeness, scars and all. Let me ask you something that could change your life. What would you create if no one was watching? Who would you become if no one was grading you? What parts of yourself have you hidden because they didn't fit the role of the brilliant one? Because those parts, those quiet, unseen, uncelebrated parts might be the very key to your freedom. You don't have to abandon your brilliance. You just have to stop using it as a cage. Use it instead as a bridge to reconnect with your body, your emotions, your playfulness, your humanity. And yes, it will be awkward at first, because you were never taught how to rest, how to soften, how to be held. But that doesn't mean you can't learn now. You can. You must. Because the alternative is a lifetime of emptiness masked by achievement, a lifetime of applause that never touches your soul, a lifetime of being seen by everyone and known by no one, not even yourself. So here's the deepest truth I can offer. You were never just the brilliant child. You were the sensitive one, the intuitive one, the one who felt deeply and learned quickly because you had to. But now you get to choose. You get to slow down. You get to peel back the layers. You get to meet the parts of yourself that brilliance overshadowed. And when you do, you'll find something surprising. Not more brilliance, but something better, something softer, something real. The gift that became a cage, how intelligence turned into a survival strategy. You were praised for being exceptional, but no one ever asked what it cost you. That's the tragedy behind the brilliance. People saw the output, high grades, quick wit, emotional insight, but they never saw what was driving it underneath. They didn't see the fear of disappointing someone you loved, the anxiety of being forgotten if you didn't keep performing, the terror of being ordinary. Your intelligence wasn't just natural, it became necessary. It became your currency in a world where love felt conditional. And when the stakes are that high, intelligence stops being a gift and becomes a strategy for survival. Think about it. If you were the brilliant child, chances are you learned early on that being smart made life smoother. Adults left you alone. Teachers favored you. Your parents bragged about you, even if they never really knew what you were going through. You became a symbol of success, something to be proud of, something to showcase, but not someone to hold, not someone to ask, how are you really doing? So you learned to keep going. You learned to become who the world wanted, even if it meant losing touch with the person you needed to become. And now here you are, an adult, maybe even successful by many standards. But inside, there's a void no achievement seems to fill. You've read the books, you've done the therapy, you've checked all the boxes, and still something's missing, something essential. That something, it's not more knowledge, it's not more success. It's the connection you never had to your own vulnerability, to your own messy, unfiltered, non-performing self. The one who existed before you had to be brilliant. The one who still exists, buried under all the roles you've played to stay safe. Let me ask you something that might feel uncomfortable. When did you first realize that being smart got you love? Was it when you brought home a perfect report card and saw your parents' eyes light up? Was it when you solved grown-up problems before you were even old enough to understand your own emotions? That moment when your intelligence became your identity was the moment you quietly began sacrificing your inner world for external validation. And now, every time you feel empty, it's not because you lack brilliance, it's because you've been cut off from the parts of you that don't need to be brilliant to deserve love. The philosopher Soren Kierkegaard once said, "The deepest form of despair is to be someone other than yourself." And many of us, especially those labeled as gifted, spend our entire lives becoming what others praised while slowly disconnecting from what we actually feel. That's why the emptiness hits so hard. It's not apathy. It's not depression in the clinical sense. It's dislocation, a spiritual homesickness, a sense that you are living life from the outside in, not the inside out. And you can't fix that by doubling down on performance. You fix it by unlearning the belief that your worth depends on your excellence. And here's the trap. The more brilliant you are, the easier it is to avoid this inner work. You can intellectualize your pain, Analyze your trauma, read philosophy to explain your emptiness, and still be completely disconnected from your own heart. That's the brilliance trap. You can talk about emotions without feeling them. You can explain your childhood without grieving it. You can understand your patterns without ever breaking them. Why? Because intelligence can be a wall, a beautiful, sophisticated wall that keeps you safe, but also keeps you alone. So what do? How do you begin to break this pattern without losing the things that helped you survive? You start by realizing that your intelligence is part of you, it's not all of you. You reclaim the parts that got left behind, your playfulness, your softness, your confusion, your anger, your longing. You give yourself permission to not know, to not fix, to not impress. You learn to be present, not just productive. You practice being with yourself, not just performing for others. And little by little, you find something deeper than brilliance. You find belonging, not in others, but in your own being. And yes, it will feel scary. It will feel like death. Because in a way, it is. It's the death of the false self, the self you built to survive. But what emerges in its place is something far more powerful: authenticity. A life that feels real. Not because everything is perfect, but because you're finally aligned with your truth. And that truth doesn't need to be dazzling. It just needs to be yours. That's when the emptiness begins to shift, not with a bang, but with a quiet sense of coming home. So let me leave you with one last question for now. What part of you have you exiled in order to be brilliant? Because that part, that forgotten, dismissed, inconvenient part might just be the key to your wholeness. And wholeness, unlike brilliance, doesn't need to be impressive. It just needs to be real. Returning to the forgotten self, from performative living to inner belonging, there comes a moment, if you're lucky, if you're honest, if you're brave, when you realize the person you've been building isn't the person you truly are. And that moment can feel like collapse, like your inner scaffolding is falling apart. The identity you've worn for years, the smart one, the achiever, the insightful observer, suddenly feels hollow. Not because it's fake, but because it was incomplete. You were never only brilliant. You were also tender, confused, insecure, curious, playful, emotional. But the world didn't have much room for those parts, did it? So you tucked them away. And now, in the quiet moments, they come knocking again, not to destroy you, but to bring you home. This homecoming begins with reconnection, not to your thoughts, but to your being. It requires you to slow down enough to notice what you feel without trying to fix it. You begin to ask questions you once avoided. What do I want when no one is watching? What do I feel when I stop performing? What part of me have I been waiting for someone else to validate? These aren't surface-level questions. They are the kind that shake foundations. And they must, because if you've built your life on being impressive, it will take more than insight to reclaim your aliveness. It will take honesty, vulnerability, grief. Yes, a grief. Because when you realize how much of yourself you abandoned to be accepted, you will grieve. You'll grieve the childhood you never had, the softness you weren't allowed to show, the years you spent earning love that should have been unconditional. You'll grieve the people who praised your mind but ignored your heart. And most painfully, you'll grieve the parts of yourself that you learned to hate because they didn't fit the role of the exceptional one. But don't run from this grief. It's sacred. It's the cry of your forgotten self saying, I'm still here. I've always been here, and I want to come back. And when you let that self return, something beautiful begins to happen. Your life stops being a performance and starts becoming a relationship with yourself. You begin to choose presence over perfection, curiosity over certainty, connection over control. You stop needing to be the smartest person in the room because you're finally allowing yourself to be the realest one. And that shift, subtle, slow, but unstoppable, is what heals the emptiness. Not by filling it, but by transforming it. What was once a void becomes a sanctuary, a quiet space where you're allowed to be exactly as you are. This is what philosophers and mystics have always pointed to. Not the escape from self, but the return to it. Socrates said, "Know thyself." But he didn't mean know your resume. He meant know your soul. Know the parts of you that can't be measured, can't be monetized, can't be posted on a highlight reel. And in a world that rewards the persona, choosing the self is revolutionary. It's not flashy, it's not always fun, but it's real. And in the end, realness is what we're all starving for. Not more information, not more brilliance, but more truth, more intimacy, more existence. So if you are the brilliant child and you feel empty now, know this: you are not broken. You are not a fraud. You are not lost. You are simply being called back. Back to the self that existed before the performance. Back to the child you were before the world taught you who to be. And that child wasn't just brilliant. That child was whole. That child is still in you. And it's time not to become someone new, but to remember who you were all along.